Anatomy of a Chair, Part 3, Importing CAD Files into SketchUp. Many modelers find it a difficult mental construct to be modeling inside of the file of a component. It feels kind of like living in the house while you're remodeling it. Another workflow is to always treat your product components as objects that you can hold in your hand while you're working on them. This means that you manipulate a component within a working file. And then save the component out to a library folder for upload to 3D Warehouse. Many building product manufacturers want to reuse their existing CAD models and turn them into SketchUp components. You must know the scale of the source file when importing it into another system to translate the geometry from one system to another. This means that the same object geometry, here a soda can, imported using different units results in very different sized objects. First, let's look at DWG and DXF import. I start a new file, and I open the component browser. Nothing in the file right now. Okay. File, Import, and pick my chair drawing file. I know that my chair was based on inches, and I leave the Preserve Drawing Origin box unchecked. The chair comes in at my current model origin, and that point is at the lower left corner of the geometry of the chair. Because I had no pre-existing geometry in the model, the chair geometry comes in as separate entities. Here is where I suppose folks are making a group of everything and then moving it to the correct place and saving the file. Hence the empty outer wrapper we saw in the Part 2 video. Don't do that. Now I will import the chair, this time checking the Preserve Drawing Origin box. Two things are different. First, the chair has shifted position. The chair's origin point was preserved and was placed at the current model's origin. The second thing is, the chair came in as a component, not a bunch of entities. When there is pre-existing geometry in the model, any geometry imported comes in as a component, using the name of the imported file as the name of the new component. See, here it is named Kitchen Chair. .dwg. Let's go back to the product model working file I started with. If I import my CAD chair file but forget to preserve drawing origin, see how it comes in placed at the current model's origin as a component? And my chair origin shifts on me. I then try to correct it by making a new component of my chair, selecting a correct origin point. I put a line in to be able to select the midpoint for my axis origin. But I have to give it a new name since my import file had the name I wanted, and the name cannot be duplicated. So I will name it Finished Kitchen Chair. There are three problems right off. Number one, the chair has an extra line in it that I don't want. Secondly, now my component name is not what I want. And I have created an empty wrapper again, only this time, instead of a group within the component, I have my original component inside an outer component wrapper. Things are going from bad to worse. Let's back up. Now I'm going to undo back to before importing the chair and re-import the chair with Preserve Origin still unchecked. The CAD geometry came in as a named component already. No need to nest it into another component. Just edit the component. Right-click and adjust its axis origin using Change Axis, and the component is fixed. Now that the chair is in SketchUp format, just right-click on it and Save As to put it in a library folder. The STL Importer from Trimble works just like the DWG DXF Importer in asking you to set the units for import and to preserve the origin or not. But STL files come in as groups and not named components. This means that STL files usually require a certain amount of simplification and reorganization to be ready for upload to 3D Warehouse. At a minimum, I need to context click and make component out of the group. Then I change the name of the new component to what I want. Then I use change axis if needed to set the correct orientation. Then I scale the geometry to the correct size and scale the definition to the new size. Finally, I'm ready to save as to a library folder, but I should simplify the geometry on this one prior to uploading it to 3D Warehouse. Let's look at the 3ds import for a 3D Studio file. Select the sink. I guess that it was modeled in inch units. For 3ds, SketchUp always preserves the origin of the import file. SketchUp pans my view to the origin, but puts the component on my cursor, and I have to click to place it manually into the current model to finish the import. Oops, it looks like inches was the wrong guess. So let's back up, and I'll try importing it with feet. Go from inches to feet. OK. Import. OK. And it brings it in on the cursor, and then I will click into the file to place it. And that looks better. That looks correct. 3ds Import names the component differently from the import file name. See how I have two versions and two names, one for each import. To make sure of the correct one, I will use the outliner because it is linked to the component I select in the model. I'll rename the new component to what I want under Entity Info Definition. I should check the object nesting in the outliner, and indeed there are subcomponents to the 3ds sink. I'll name it New Sink. There, that worked. Then I can right-click and save as to a library folder. The IFC importer places the import geometry at the origin just like DXF, but always preserves the origin of the import file just like 3ds. The import is a randomly named component. For any imported CAD geometry, you should always check the new component's axis origin before saving it out. Notice that the CAN file has the geometry very far from the origin. Many engineering CAD programs are used to fabricate the actual building product. These files have far too many polygons for a design file. In general, you should model for visualization, design, or specifying, not for manufacturing. A great SketchUp product model is one that performs well in the context of a larger model, say a building, a park, or a floor plan, not as a standalone model. A component should represent a product's physical dimensions, giving the object a recognizable appearance, and enable the object to be positioned in the same manner as the product itself, nothing more. Okay, let's review the importers for SketchUp. DWG DXF requires import units and specify origin, and comes in as a named component with the same name as the import file, placed at the current model origin. STL requires import units and specify origin, and comes in as a group, placed at the current model origin. 3ds requires import units, but preserves the import origin and comes in as a randomly named component on the cursor. You must click to place it to finish the import. The IFC importer always preserves the import origin and comes in as a randomly named component placed at the current model origin. Here, this chart should help explain all that. To summarize, import the CAD geometry, check the axis origin and adjust if necessary, rename the component if necessary, simplify the geometry by editing the component, oftentimes this will involve tracing over the existing CAD geometry and turning it into SketchUp. Finally, right-click and Save As to a library folder for upload to 3D Warehouse. Be sure to see the various articles available for further explanation of each of these steps. Hope to see you in the 3D Warehouse.